All right, here we are, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. It's not necessarily a moment of celebration, but what I want to do is, first of all, thank everyone who has come out to participate. I found that for me, doing live streams has become a new source of, if you will, therapy, because when you are in publishing the way I am, and when you are trying to take a stand and getting out opinions and information that's unpopular, you get a lot of pushback, not only from the mainstream and not only from social media platforms, but actually from your own list. And this period, because some of you have been with me since the beginning of the COVID crisis, you know my story. You can go back to earlier live streams. And there was a point where in Miami, they had just implemented a curfew. And I was literally homeless at the time because my home had suffered a catastrophic leak and mold outbreak, and you couldn't even get Airbnb. So I was trying to navigate life in a way that was very stressful. And I was not certain whether or not they were going to try to implement the draconian level orders that we have seen be implemented in places throughout the world. So it was a very strange and scary moment for a lot of us. And here we are. We came through it. Yes, there's been some real tragedy and there's been some real trauma. But I can tell you that from what I've seen and from where I'm looking at even what happened today with Instagram, is that this is technically a good sign, because our voices are becoming so potent and so widespread that they've gone from simply ignoring and potentially shadow banning and algorithmic deboosting to outright censorship and targeting and slandering. Because right before this happened, Avaz and NewsGuard and New York Times all teamed up and started to identify brands like GreenMedInfo and by implication, individuals like myself as super spreaders of health misinformation, which is of course ironic given that we at least try to provide balance to a narrative that has been, very, very one-sided and oftentimes rather egregious in not being evidence-based. So, at the least, we can say right now that there's enough pressure on the system that has architected and implemented this crisis. And what I mean by that is the response to whatever COVID is, bioweapon to common cold and flu season, to whatever you want to call it. The response to COVID is what most of us here today are concerned about. I did a poll recently on Telegram, and I was shocked to find that even though there's been widespread economic devastation, psychological trauma associated with isolation, the primary thing people were concerned about was their constitutional and bodily sovereignty rights. And that does not surprise me, because you guys out there are a bunch of warriors as far as I'm concerned, because I've seen the engagement and the comments and the amplification of the advocacy we have done, because GreenMedInfo only exists really because of social media and because of forces that are beyond the control, perhaps, of even mankind. What I mean by that is a divine connection. I do think that we are all in this in a way that makes sense when we acknowledge that there's something beyond the ego, and there are forces at play that aren't just nefarious. There's actually really positive energies as well that are constantly backing us up. I don't have to go all bypassing and new agey either here, because my book, Regenerate, and my advocacy around understanding the body and, if you will, the new biology, is to uncover the fact that we are infinitely more resilient than anyone has ever told us. Because when you really boil it down, biology, medicine, it's a bunch of stories. It's about a bunch of stories about who we are, what we can do, who has control over us. And that's what this moment is about, is that the forces that are in control, including the forces that have taken over social media, they would like you to believe that you are weak. They want you to be afraid and you will therefore be extremely controllable. And everything that I've ever tried to stand up for, everything that GreenMed Info has ever tried to put out there has at least had the intention of telling a different story, a story that I feel is actually just true, which is that you are powerful, you can heal even from what they call incurable disease. That story, the story of the new biology, and if you will, the new story of humanity, is starting to be born in this moment. Y'all are the seeds for this, right? I'm just one of many seeds. There's a great proverb out there, is that they tried to bury us and they forgot that we were seeds. Because what do you do with seeds? You bury them and they come back even stronger. How many infinite forests are contained within a simple oak tree? Well, that kind of power, we use metaphors from nature to describe that kind of power, because that is what fundamentally you are. That is what nature is. That's what the divine power is. And that is what is at stake right now. And it's scaring them to the point where they're trying to take voices like ours out. And guess what? I don't think they're doing a good job, because every time they've tried to deplatform us, every time they've tried to censor us, what's happened is we've become even stronger, more resilient, which is the story I'm trying very hard to get out there with your help, which is fundamentally, we are infinitely more resilient than anyone has ever told us. And so what I mean by that is, when they tried taking us out in 2000, and actually started late 2018, Pinterest removed us, MailChimp removed us in 2019, Google scrubbed all natural health from the internet. Ironic or coincidental, right? Because GlaxoSmithKline gave them $700 million 2 years before that. It's like they keep trying to take us out, and what happens? We grow stronger, meaning our newsletter list double. Or I discovered Instagram, and of course, within about a year, we had in total 150,000 followers with really high engagement. And so, yeah, I made potentially a mistake there. And that's part of what I want to share with you here, is that on some level, all the energy, all the prana, if you will, that we give to social media is just going to be used against us on some level. It could be the fact that the information's being harvested. It could just be that the attention that we would normally have with each other, with our children, with our self-care rituals, with our communities, has been robbed, because we're putting it all into social media. So there is an interesting thing, is just like a day ago, I was thinking, well, the writing's on the wall. They're saying that they should take out Facebook. I mean, they should, they've been already doing that actually. And I was thinking, wow, what a blessing that could be, that I don't any longer have any reason to be on this thing any longer than I already am. So that's one of the blessings. And this is a case use case for the future, for the individuals out there like myself who have used this technology to get a message out. Be aware that they can pull the rug at any moment. And that is part of why I'm sharing this, is I feel like it's clear that we can still create resilience communities through other platforms that aren't under the sway of the same powers that right now are just shutting down social media. Telegram's a good example. It's not perfect. It may get co-opted in the future, but as of right now, they allow 200,000 people on their channels. And the channels to me are a great way for me to stay in touch with you all in this window as we continue to win many battles of wakefulness. Basically, people are waking up, and that is why you're seeing the clampdown, is that there's so many people since this happened that have relied on social media, that have relied on the work that you're doing out there as well, to basically reveal the truth about what is happening. So I just wanted to cover a few things, and I'm so excited because my dearest friend, Dr. Joelle Bohemier, who is a senior advisor for GreenMed Info, someone that has been sort of behind the scenes like an angel, a warrior, if you will, because he is one. He has been a fearless mentor of mine for many years, who's done incredible work, just completely under the radar of social media. And that's the thing, is I couldn't be doing all this if I didn't have powerful, beautiful, dedicated people like him behind me. And that is what's going on. All of you are the same thing. we are starting to develop a field globally. Did you see what happened in Europe? Was that not beautiful to see these incredible protests, or if you will, them just going out and congregating was a declaration of victory. And that is really a simple thing that we could all start considering. And what I'm basically pointing out is that there are so many people out there like Joel, who will be on soon, that have been doing good work. It's been happening relatively tracelessly, but it's all accumulating to the point where again, the powers that be are not able to execute this agenda the way they thought they could. They did this particular, and I'm saying did this pandemic as if, quite a few people still think this is a completely organic event, and that some invisible particle from Wuhan, China has basically taken out the global socioeconomic structure, and that there's no deeper layer to the narrative, right? And that's the obvious layer of reification that the fact checkers and all those who are censoring us are trying to keep people at. But the reality is that this was highly architected, highly premeditated, to the point where it's only when I start to really call out the agendas and the individuals involved and organizations that we start to see the ramping up of the deplatforming attempt. But on some level, that's okay, because we all should expect this to take something from us that isn't comfortable. We're going to have to stand up for the truth. I went to UPS before I came, and I didn't have a mask on. And I made it very clear to the gentleman that that is not going to happen. And he consented to me picking up a package. So it takes going out there on a limb, standing up for your principles, and together, slowly but surely, we will prevail. Okay, so I wanted to just cover a few things before I bring Joel on. And we're going to talk a lot about censorship and the larger context within which this is happening, which is relevant to us all, in my belief, because this is not just about, social media shutting down a few independent voices. It's not just about natural medicine anymore. This is about the world waking up to the fact that there has been fundamentally a restructuring of the power on this planet, and that under the auspices of biosecurity, under the auspices of saving your life and the life of everyone on the planet from these lethal viral particles and germs, they've basically taken control of every country in the world. And there's a power struggle happening that is so intense right now that is why we're being targeted, because we're part of this larger chessboard. So I just want to help people understand that, I'm not disillusioned by thinking that this is just about censoring natural medicine or informed consent or about some vaccine that's coming. This is much larger. And I think a lot of you get that. And I think we're in a moment where we have to connect the dots to really make sense of what is happening. And hopefully by the end of this, we can also realize that maybe part of the problem is that we are putting too much of our energy online. And actually, as my beloved wife, Kelly, pointed out just recently, maybe what we really need to do here is have faith that we can inspire and influence others through non-linear means. So not only about the number of followers we have, but sometimes one conversation with one person can change the world. That is what I think this is about. I can speak for myself. And that is what I'm hoping that you will also get from this. Because if you really look at what's happened in this window, there's been such a pressurization on us to get the primary basic human needs met that humans have from tech, right? They cut us off. They socially isolated us. They're threatening us with normal human interactions being basically redefined as deadly. Going to church, congregating, not wearing a mask while running, playing basketball. They've basically effectively convinced the world that this is harmful behavior and that it can threaten others. This is where the rubber meets the road, because this spell is forcing people into surrogate or proxy actions on their devices. Sort of like the the mouse warriors, right? Clicking away, being protesters. And I've done plenty of that. I'm even helping others do that. So I'm just pointing out to you, though, that I think that we're at that critical mass. Is you look at Europe, you look at other countries, they're finally just showing up. Okay, they're saying, no, I'm sorry, we do not consent to these extremely harmful executive orders. They violate our basic human rights. And, in the United States, they violate our constitutional rights, which are higher jurisdiction than the law, because that's what confers power to the legal system, is the fact that we have a constitution. So we're in a country where so many of us are latched to our devices, and we're getting, our social needs met by proxy, the performativity of Instagram and all these other mediums. And yes, they are better than nothing. Take those things away, and arguably, the agenda will roll on and lurch forward even, faster. So I'm not saying we need to remove those things, but acknowledge that it's probably time for us really to stand up. And that's why, again, Joel is more than just a big part of GreenMedInfo. He's also the co-founder of Stand for Health Freedom. So you're getting a double whammy here of awesomeness, because this organization exists to empower you and I with tools so that we can then organize locally. We can make an impact, in our local jurisdictions, but also do it digitally. So it's a balance. The other thing is transforming the victim narrative, because that's the basis for the entire, if you will, psyop embedded within conventional science and biology and medicine, is that you're a victim. You can look at your germs, or you can look at your genes. It's the same thought form, the same meme, and it's infecting people with a sense of complete paralysis. Is because they think that health is a byproduct of viruses, viral particles that are invisible, that haven't even been validated to exist through electron microscopes, for example. Like, this is what we've given our power over to. And we have this faith in the medical system and these priests of the body that they have the devices that can scry the particles that, again, this is like Middle Ages lore. Like, they might as well be invisible demons. And that is what they fundamentally have architected into the sciences that we believe are religious-based faith in, and that no longer has any validity given the discoveries of basic microbiome and virome science. It's just no longer valid. So the victim narrative is how they were able to pull this off. We were already acting like victims. We were already acting so dependent on the system, and so willing to just trust the government's going to take care of it for us, or we trust mainstream media when the primary funder is the pharmaceutical industry. Still, anyone who, basically is at the teat of CNN or Fox or any of the same media outlets, right, that generate the illusion of difference, that's a sign that they've drank the Kool-Aid, that they're being victimized, and they're willingly, taking this ideology. And this is how this all happened, is that we've already been rendered victims. So that's a big part of what I'd like to do here. Is I don't feel a victim. I anticipated Instagram was going to try to take us out, or Facebook. And that's why we have Telegram already as a backup, and that's what I want you also to do, is just be aware that the more we play into the victim story, the less we look to where we are responsible for our health, right? The more likely we'll become prey to this operation, which has the same power over countries and their citizenry as 9/11 did, right? And all the changes that followed. This is the same type of event, and it happens to be that those who've been on the front lines of natural medicine, chiropractors and naturopaths and homeopaths and integrative doctors and health coaches and those doing spiritual work, Reiki. I mean, there's so many people in our community that have been doing nothing but empowering people to know that when you take radical responsibility for your health, there is no victim left. There's absolutely no victim left. Now, it's a paradox in this moment, because we are on some level being victimized. There is an intention, a conspiracy to harm individuals and to take certain individuals out of the picture. I could even look at myself and what happened as being a victim. So there is a paradox here, and you have to kind of navigate that middle path, because otherwise it's going to sound bypassy or unrealistic and non-empathic, because there are people that are suffering. But those of us who have come to embrace, if you will, what is happening and our destinies, understand that ultimately we're responsible. And all we really want to do is have the choice to determine what happens to our bodies and our children's bodies. That is fundamentally it. If someone else wants to vaccinate, I want them to have that choice. See, that is fundamentally a deeper layer than being pro or anti-vax. Freedom is at the core of what's happening and what's emerging for people. This is not some kind of political talking point anymore. It's not some right-wing rhetoric, but freedom is fundamentally the core of the human soul and being. And choice is even more fundamental than your political affiliation and your belief system around medicine. You should be able to choose what to do with your body. If you want to wear a mask, okay, you want to vaccinate, I support you, but do not interfere with my choice. And that is what's coming up. And that's why in this moment, I think you are also feeling it. We're getting to the point where a new movement is forming in this country and around the world. It's trans political, right? It's beyond whether you're Republican or Democrat. You can be either, that's fine. But I think we're at the point where we know it's freedom or tyranny. Those terms mean a lot now, because we are being subject firsthand to what tyranny is. When you have 50 to 60 million Americans whose jobs were completely deleted, their ability to provide for their children, to take care of themselves, when the CDC's latest provisional death count shows less than 10,000 people were coded to have died solely as a result of exposure to COVID-19. That's the CDC's own website. That is why they're trying to take our voice out right now, because that fact is so egregious and so hard to question that all you can do now is just completely take the messenger out. Take out as many messengers as you can. Delete Trump's tweet about the 6% stat. And that's literally what they're doing right now. They're even trying to censor the president. That's pretty amazing. So let's just call it for what it is. On some basic level, the old system is dead, and we cannot rely on politicians to save us, Trump or anyone else. And let's hope that someone gets into office that is going to support health freedom. That's fine. But what we are seeing, I think Joel and I can speak to this later, is that there is truly a patriotic movement occurring that is based on compassion. It's based on freedom of choice, respecting parental rights, informed consent. These are universal human, they're global values. And this movement isn't just about the United States anymore. It is global. And that's what we saw recently in Europe. So I'm actually excited. And I want to make sure we're planning this out and we're working together. We're empowering each other. That's one reason why we'll have a bunch of call to actions at the end of this. And also why I'm bringing in Joel Bohemier, because he's someone that I want you to know about. We'll have a great discussion here and turn this into a positive experience for everybody. That is what I want, and I know we can make that happen. All right, I'm going to bring Joel on. Hey, Joel.
Hello, Sayer. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. As I was telling everyone, you've been such an inspiration to me, and I think people need to know who you are and also the kinds of conversations we regularly have behind the scenes that might serve others. We're here with practically 1,000 people right now, and we're very honored that we have your support. And we're here also to learn from the people that are showing up so we can better serve you. So I'll let you take the floor.
Well, first of all, thanks for just building the platform and bringing everybody together of like mind, because it is really time to come together and to speak our minds. What we're noticing now, I find, is just that the emperor has no clothes, and that's what we're seeing when they use authoritarian tactics like they're doing to GreenMedInfo and to many others, not just to the president, like you had just said, it's very obvious that no longer can they just have political discourse or a conversation on the level of intellectual conversation. Now they have to just force their way into their agenda and what they want to propose. As it relates to the fact checking and why, the reason they claim why they deplatformed GreenMedInfo, I believe that in any other area of life, any reasonable, let's call it a fact checker, will literally give you the opportunity to respond or to say, oh, sorry, we made a mistake. Or they will provide proof like, oh, here, you made a mistake here. Here's the research that, supersedes yours. And especially that you're a research organization. I find it so, oxymoronic. However, they don't do that. They don't allow discourse. They don't allow conversation. It's not about having meaningful conversations to find and get to the truth and seek the truth. As a matter of fact, it has nothing to do with the truth. It has to do with just imposing their will. And when somebody comes at you with imposing your will without any conversation or dialogue, it's really time to take a deep breath, to step back and to assess the situation. I'm in my office right now, and I've been taking care of patients all day here. And literally the second last patient that I took care of before walking in to speak with you is a local nurse. And I said, hey, how are you doing today? And she goes, you know what? I'm depressed. And I said, why are you depressed? And she said, because of all of the censoring that's happening on social media, because the voices that they're pulling down that you cannot hear because of the mockery that they're trying to make of my way of thinking. And so I told her, I said, well, earlier, one of my best friends in life, Sayer G, was deplatformed from Instagram today. And I said, in that, I don't feel any sadness. I don't feel any depression. I only see opportunity. And I see opportunity here because it's time for people like myself, people on this line who are listening to this, who have followed you for a decade plus, who know the truth and seek the truth. It's time for every one of us to speak out to our circle of influence, however big or however small that is. A lot of times what I find is that when people don't have, I guess I would say, the popular opinion or the group think that is out there, that is pervasive today, of scientism, what they do is they tend just not to say anything, nod their head, and move right along, right? So they won't actually give their opinion. Well, now clearly it's the time to give your opinion. It's the time now to speak up and share it in the way that you feel is the best of your ability. It's no longer okay anymore to sit in a conversation with moms who are talking about, whether having home births or having a hospital birth. And if you believe in home birth, yet they're all for hospital births. It's no longer okay anymore to not say anything. It's now time to give your opinion. And what we've found through the numbers that AVAS, the organization who did the research on GreenMedInfo and Mercola and others who claim that it's unscientific, what we found is that there is 10 times more people searching and watching us than there are watching the conservative news organizations, or not news organizations, but the conservative government-run, government-funded healthcare organizations. And there's a reason for that, because people are mistrusting, distrusting, they're not believing the narrative, and they want to seek truth. So it's time for you watching to speak your truth, just like Sayer is, who fearlessly and boldly gets before us on a live stream and puts it all out on the line. He says exactly what he thinks. He doesn't hold back anything. And that's, I believe, why he's been so successful, is because he speaks his truth. And that resonates with so many people now that there are, 39 million views that you've had since, that AVAS have said on social media, or 39 million impressions, I should say, over the course of this pandemic, or COVID-1984, as you like to call it, right? So I believe the emperor no longer has any clothes. They're using this authoritarian power. It's very thinly veiled over this idea of scientism, and whatever anybody else says that's not narrative is unscientific, even though you can go to the National Library of Medicine, you can go to PubMed and pull out the science of what you are talking about in so many instances, yet they just choose to say, well, no, that's not science. Not saying here's better science or here's different science or let's have a conversation, just force their way through. And people are tired of being muzzled. They're tired of being shackled. And it's not only happening on social media. I want to be very clear here. It's also happening. It's also happening to healthcare organizations, chiropractic associations, natural healthcare associations, homeopathic associations across the world, not just in the US, in Canada, in Europe, in Australia, in New Zealand, are being literally muzzled and not able to talk about anything related to natural healthcare that is not along the lines of the narrative. And so let me give you an example. Can I give you an example of that? Like I'm a Canadian chiropractor, even though I live in the US now. In Canada, chiropractors are no longer allowed to make any comments. They're not even allowed to use the word vaccination. If they do, they are fined. And if they are fined twice, it depends. Every province is slightly different, but they're fined twice. Once you're fined twice, you lose your license for a period of time. And so that's been happening for the last several years. You're not allowed to talk about the immune system and how to strengthen the immune system, even if it has nothing to do, like you can't say, hey, vitamin D3, I recommend taking that to strengthen your immune system, go out for a walk, exercise. You're not allowed to say that. That is literally against the rules and regulations of certain organizations because they are bullying us into following the narrative. And so they don't want natural healthcare practitioners to interfere because, historically, we've been the ones to stand up and say, oh, no, this is wrong. Mass vaccination, forced vaccination, you should think about it. You should make a decision on your own. Go research it. Don't just believe what the pharmaceutical companies tell you. And because they don't like us, they've found a way to systematically muzzle professional organizations as well. It's very sad to see, but at the same time, it gives opportunity to stand on different platforms and to share the message in a maybe different way that we haven't thought of for the last 30, 40, 50, 60 years.
Beautiful. I just want to just recap because so much of what you said is so resonant. Number one is you're absolutely correct. If we all just take those simple actions in our communities, our relationships, and we're willing to speak up in a way that is standing true to what we believe, but of course, being respectful and being compassionate with that intention, we could move mountains together. And that's that's the beauty of it. Because for those who have been aware of the work we've been doing here, with GreenMedInfo, it started out really with information, right? And there's really no lack of information anymore. As Joelle and I have been talking about for years, I had this goal at one point. I want to have 250,000 studies on the database. And it was always about more information. And, when it got to a point, and we're at it right now, where for informed consent, right, you do need to know the risks and benefits of both allopathic and natural. But the consent part, I had assumed would be there because of this really cool thing called, the medical ethical principle of informed consent that was arrived at after the Nuremberg trials, because the Nazis were experimenting on, people like Jews and others. They were just pretty much doing unthinkable things. So I assumed in America, we wouldn't necessarily have to be dealing with people forcing, themselves into our homes and seizing bodily fluids and treating us and isolating us, which is all presently in Florida in the letter of the law, thanks to the emergency powers that were invoked due to COVID. So now we've moved to this place in this moment in history where we're seeing fascism descend. A violence is literally arranging itself around us because there's no room for consent. And that word actually has a lot of meaning and a lot of power, because women for quite some time have made it a big part of their evolution and contribution to make sure that if there is going to be, for example, sex, there's got to be consent. So when you think about what's happening, and right now children are being forced to potentially vaccinate, that is on such another level of violence that goes beyond anything I could ever dream of. So I don't want to go too dark here, but point is what makes me, quote, fearless or, intense on this topic is that it's so clear what's happening. And right now is the time that consent and freedom and choice are top and they're front and center. And this is why we're standing up and we're not carving things out maybe the way we would if we were just a brand trying to stay solvent or trying to, just focus on one topic. I'm hoping more people out there, like what Joelle's speaking to, are willing to stand up wherever they are, whoever they are, because you have as much power as I do, Joelle has, or anyone else, any other ego or logo, as Joelle has said. This is beyond that. We're moving to the point of acknowledging that it's going to take the world to turn us to this new place. And I'm just excited that you guys are here. Look, we have 900 people live now, Joelle. It's exciting because
fantastic.
I mean, there's so many people that are waking up, so many people that will be able to take the steps that we're suggesting because it's just the right thing to do. It's as simple as that.
Sarah, growing up in Canada, I would look to America, and many Canadians do. They're, first of all, partially jealous of America for certain reasons, but also we look to America for the freedoms that they stand for and that they've always had. And I believe that the rest of the world, and the friends that I have in different countries around the world, always love America for that reason. They might not like America for certain reasons, but what they respect and have always looked up to America for is the freedoms that they stand for, that they believe in, and that they fiercely protect. And all of a sudden, never in my life would I have ever predicted a time where in America, you do not have the freedoms or might not have the freedoms to choose your own healthcare, to choose whether you're going to drive or fly or have a passport or be able to travel or be able to go to school or be able to be educated without being forcibly injected with something. I mean, that's absolutely insane. And I think if you asked anybody maybe 30, 40, 50 years ago if that would ever occur in America, they would say absolutely not. I could never see that day happening, but it's happening now. This is the direction that we're moving in. And even at the beginning of this whole situation, I thought, nah, it can't be. It can't actually be happening, but it is. And so it is time for all groups, regardless of, like you said, egos and logos, to come together, to unite, and to stay strong, because together we are unstoppable, because we are the people who make the decisions. We are the people who elect the politicians. We are the people that when we unite, they can't control all of us because there's more of us than there are of them. And so we stand for freedom. That's why we started Stand for Health Freedom. It's not stand for natural health care. It's not get rid of medicine. That's not what we're about. We're about health freedom. We're about the freedom to choose what you want, not to force you in any direction, but the freedom to choose. And because more people now are choosing natural health care than the traditional medical path, oh boy, it's not going over well with the powers that be, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, this is so important for people to realize that, right? We are for supporting health freedom. And that means that if you aren't at the point where you believe that vaccines are so dangerous and so non-science based that you wouldn't touch it with 1,000-foot pole, like myself and Joelle, that's fine. We're not here to, be your parents or to try to take away your choice. That's been the problem from the beginning, is that the conventional medical system, the way that it works is that when you walk into a conventional physician's office, there's already so much you've done to give over your power, to try to, reduce suffering or prevent a fear. You go in there, you give up your power. And that's the beginning of really the end of freedom, because the dynamic is so powerful. It's just built deep into the human DNA that we're supposed to trust those that we, came into the world through, our parents. And so there's a parentification that's happened over generations that has set up the conditions to allow an international coup d'etat. Like, this is not hyperbole. This is exactly what has happened with COVID-19. It was architected. Everyone should go to Event 201, go Google it, look at those videos, and tell me that this wasn't architected when they did a live exercise in New York City, October 2019, of a coronavirus pandemic taking over the world, shutting down the global economy, requiring draconian intervention. They even shut down social media accounts like my own. And there's even an indication that they plan to try to shut down the internet, at least temporarily. This has been architected. And this is why we're standing now in a way that is going to go and move beyond just the whole health freedom advocacy. But we do encourage you to make sure you join Stand for Health Freedom. We are organizing with a number of other groups to help empower you and to translate this into a real grassroots effort so we can give you the tools you need to have a greater impact in your communities.
It's almost time to have a march for health freedom. I really feel like people are always asking me, what can I do? What can I do? Well, standforhealthfreedom.com, definitely. Speak to your circle of influence. And I believe that we should organize at some point like a march where people can physically be present to speak their truths in a physical way, in a physical manifestation. What's happening is, with this monoculture of medicine, with this monoculture of pharmaceutical medicine as the only way to healthcare, is absolutely insane. If you look at from a microscopic, from a microcosm to a macrocosm, anytime you have monocultures, they don't succeed. You need a variety to have health. You can't eat one food and be healthy just eating one same food for your whole life, because you're going to lack certain nutrients and vitamins that other foods provide, right? Yeah. And the same thing happens. You can't just have one way of healthcare, because there's not only one way of achieving health, right? And so this idea to force everybody in this monoculture of healthcare called pharmaceutical medicine is absolutely insane. It's proven time and time again to be dangerous. And so, it really is time to stand up for health freedom, and more than just health freedom, like you're talking about too, for our individual rights as well.
This is so profound because, for years I've been talking about how the genetic modification agenda is not about, trying to feed the world. Absolutely not, because you're destroying the biodiversity of the arable surface of the planet with the literally infinite number of species of organisms using biocidal agents, meaning broad spectrum kills all living things, bacterial, animal, plant, called glyphosate, and other stacked pesticides. And then you're barcoding it genetically so that just that one poison plant will exist and everything else will die. So you think about the mentality that went into that, how dark it is really, and how they've been selling it to the world as this is the solution that's going to help humanity, when it's literally destroying everything and everyone. Monoculturing, one culture, is the same as monotheism, one God. Medical monotheism, exactly. It's scientism. And when you have the belief that there's only one right way or one right thing, that's when dehumanization starts, and that's when violence starts. That's when inquisitions happen against heretics who don't believe in that particular medical model. And that's been going on now for decades. I've been involved, as Joel has been, in this, if you will, fight for many years, watching the vaccine agendas descend and the rhetoric ramp up throughout the country and the dehumanization that's happened. And I've mentioned this in previous articles. In the well-trodden steps to genocide, there's 10 steps. We're at about step 5, where they start identifying minority groups, could be non-mask wearers or non-vaccinators, as vermin and or disease carriers. And that is a way of thinking that actually has its roots deep in human history. But you can go to the Third Reich and look at the way that they use germ theory as a weaponized political instrument. and how that was ultimately transferred over to the United States, which is why we are experiencing this right now. And I just want everyone to be aware that what Joelle's pointing out does really affect us all and will continue to, because they not only attempted an international coup d'etat, but they pretty much accomplished it. And that is where we are uniquely positioned in the United States. We have freedoms and we have the Constitution and other things at our disposal that we can still use to make sure that this agenda does not get executed to the degree that I think the architects of it want. And so that's what I would add to that.
Yeah, and let's be clear, like children who are born into a naturally raised family, no vaccines, natural foods, and no, a decrease in chemicals in their lives, they are far healthier than children who are eat hybridized and chemicalized food and filled with chemicals. I'm from a family of 46 chiropractors. I have 46 chiropractors. I personally have never been vaccinated. My children have never been vaccinated. And in the couple of times that we've gone to medical doctors usually it's for a physical for a sports team or something that you need them to fill out, or maybe it's an emergency for stitches or something like that. Almost always they say, how come you guys are so healthy? All the chiropractic kids are so healthy. Why are they so healthy? Yet they don't change their way of thinking of taking care of the children, of the other kids that they care of. They continue to inoculate, inject, chemicalize, and hybridize them. And that leads to unhealthy children. That leads to unhealthy adults. That leads to an unhealthy way of thinking and an unhealthy planet. And that's where we are today. So we do have to stand up and be proud of our beliefs. Mm-hmm. We have to let people know that it's okay. But because people have been so brainwashed, including the doctors from the pharmaceutical companies and the people and the population, they are now terrified to not give an antibiotic when a child gets sick, to not get a vaccination when a child is born, because they literally believe that their child will die. I mean, it's absolute insanity, but it's time for people like us to stand up, tell the truth, and without any fear of repercussion, without any fear of deplatforming, without any fear of being, trolled on the internet or whatever the case is. Let them troll. Let them call you out. Let them do all those things, because ultimately it's very clear. If you live a natural life, you are far healthier in general than somebody who lives a chemicalized, hybridized life. That's the bottom line. Bottom line. And so most people who are, like, I saw somebody in one of the comments say, a march of healthy people, right? Yeah, because it's that obvious. If you live like Sayer lives, then guess what? Your offspring, Sayer's children, are far healthier than an average child. Guess what? Because they make different decisions that doesn't follow the narrative that they want everybody else to follow. Yet, it's still fearful for some people. And so I encourage you to just try it, to walk in the steps, to ask questions, to seek truth, and to follow that, and just listen, like meditate, pray about it, listen to the innate wisdom that's already inside of you, right? And allow it to guide you to make better decisions for your health, for your family's health. And then inevitably what happens is your circle of influence comes to you and says, what are you doing that's different? Why do you have so much energy? Why are you so healthy? And then you become cause for your circle of influence making changes. And that's how the movement grows. And that's what you've done, Sarah, which is absolutely fascinating. Why I'm so proud of you. Why I love you. I love what you've done for this movement, because it has transcended. You started in a store down the street here, many, many years ago. And now you are an authority in healthcare, where the New York Times has to write about you to try and pull people away from watching you, but it's not working. It's only growing, and we're only getting stronger. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you so much, Joelle. I mean, the reality is that being in front of a computer for the years that I did, it really affected my health. And, there's a certain hypocrisy that comes with that. So at some point I had to really reprioritize just working on myself. And because of that process, because I've had a lot of challenges and I had to overcome some of the challenges I created for myself. But the reality is that what you're telling us right now is really important in navigating this moment, because fear is the metric as well as love and trust. And when I fear, something. It tends to be my mind sort of taking over and thinking about all the things that could happen that are wrong, versus when I'm trusting my body or trusting my instincts or trusting that I'm a good human and that others are good. Because I worked with children, troubled children, actually, for a good portion of my post-graduation first career in wilderness therapy, and they were troubled. Mainly boys out in the Everglades. We'd live in the wild there. It was very challenging. And I always came to understand that children and adults as well, of course, they live up or down to your expectations. And we have to extend that possibility to those that we might even consider our enemies, or those who may have intentions that are potentially going to hurt us or our children. You give them an opportunity, but you don't compromise your own principles. You do stand up, and you do it strongly, and there's going to be discomfort in that, but you will have the universe, you will have the truth, on your side. And that is what's been happening. I'm really proud of this country, because I am so amazed by how many people did stand up. I'll give Kelly credit, because early in this event, there was a protest, and I was hesitant. Because as a parent, the last thing you want to do is think about your child going to an event and, it's, quote, technically, is it unlawful to do so? Well, when you look at the Constitution and you look at what's right and ethical and what spiritually infuses you, no, it's actually completely a violation not to go and stand up and do the right thing. And I chose love, and I chose to act with courage. And I got to see, my children grow in that experience. It was like when March Against Monsanto happened. We went to Fort Myers. I had my girls in a little Red Ryder wagon, and it was so beautiful, because for years, Joel, I was alone in my computer, just typing about how, glyphosate was evil, and Jeffrey Smith and a few others. And that was the moment I realized, oh my God, the world has my back. Everyone's saying it now. Before, I was a big target on my forehead. So to the degree that all of you out there are doing this good work, you're protecting us, from more than censorship. They used to delete people. Thankfully, they're not doing that anymore, because there's too many of you following us. There's too many of you that would notice if we went missing. So don't think you're not an important part of the success of GreenMedInfo. You're the reason why we are here and why we have had this impact.
Well, amen to that. And I totally agree. Love and truth at the cellular level is right, and at the physiological level, it feels good. Globally, it feels right. In relationships, it feels right. And so that's why they follow you, because it's truth, and they're seeking truth. And that's why people, regardless of the deplatforming and the amount of times they try and hide you and segregate you from the rest of the world, people will continue to find you because you're speaking truth. I love it.
Well, that's
what can people do there? What can, there's a bunch of people watching. What can they do to like help the movement?
Yeah, so right now, what I'm anticipating is that, and I think this is one reason why I got deplatformed, or why we've been facing this, is that when the vaccines are released in the fall, there's going to be a huge wave of adverse effects, unfortunately. And thankfully, enough people have woken up where now the polls show the majority of Americans won't touch it. But what will happen is they will blame those reactions on COVID, because it will overlap with the natural influenza cold season. And they're going to then clamp down even further on certain accounts, certain individuals. And I think we're getting around that in a certain way now. Like, I anticipated that would happen. We have Telegram. We really encourage you to use it. Start your own channels there. Connect with others.
Somebody was having trouble finding you on Telegram. How do they do that?
Thank you. So there is a banner here we have with the Telegram URL. And what you can do, by the way, is we're not trying to get people all on their devices. Mobile, like I don't like mobile devices. I usually have them on airplane mode. You can download it to desktop, and then when you're on desktop, of course, use a filter to make sure you're not getting all that blue light constantly. Make sure you have a hard connection, not Wi-Fi. We want you to be safe out there with these devices. They're very powerful, but we want to make sure we use them responsibly. And Telegram is a great way for us to get around the censorship. a lot of the protests that happened in Europe, they were using Twitter, they were using Facebook, and now it's come out that entire groups have been deleted. They're not doing that with Telegram. At least I haven't seen any reports yet. So this is a very powerful tool for when we do have boots on the ground, grassroots rallies and marches. There's a huge desire for that right now. So that's one way that you can stay engaged, because that's where we'll be focusing a lot of the updates and real-time information that hopefully will help you. And then, of course, we have GreenMedInfo.com. You know, that's where we live. That's where we're getting out the information the best we can. And thankfully, we have that because a lot of you social media influencers and activists, you know, you're vulnerable, unfortunately, to deplatforming, where if they take your account, you don't have backups. So you can use our model. Go ahead, create a group, a website, develop a newsletter list, you know, do the things we're doing. And that's the beauty of diversity, is there are so many of us out there. They can't take us all out. And we want to share what we've done that works. We also want to share the nonprofit that we co-founded, Stand for Health Freedom. It's about to reach its 1-year anniversary. And it's just a miracle, really, what it's been able to do to serve you and I in empowering us, right, with the tools we need to take action. And so that's another way. Am I forgetting anything else, Joel?
Well, I just want to stress the fact that they should if people aren't following you on GreenMedInfo and aren't members of GreenMedInfo, I highly recommend it, because you're putting out information every single day, not only on this topic, but on healthcare in general and on the science of healthcare, of natural healthcare specifically. And I would probably say it's the safest way to stay connected. Absolutely. And if your friends aren't doing it, please share it on social media. Share the GreenMedInfo sign up on social media for them to be able to follow Sayer on there. I think that's absolutely necessary. I just read a comment here who said they followed you, Sayer, and like, I've been following you since the inception of GreenMedInfo, but they've followed you and have healed from cancer because of the recommendations and the science that you shared on GreenMedInfo. There are amazing stories. There are I don't know how many people, but you've impacted millions of people now around the world. And it's time to, like, you know, share Sayer with your friends and share Sayer with your circle of influence. I know I go to GreenMedInfo on a regular basis to help my patients, to give them the most up-to-date science on natural healthcare. And so if you're not doing that, by all means, do it. Like you said, Stand for Health Freedom. I think we now have over 600,000 actions that have been sent to over 20,000 politicians in the US to voice their opinion. Either it's an email that's written or a video that's sent. That is unbelievable in less than a year. That's fantastic. It's powerful. Get on there. It's amazing.
I could add to that, because I am amazed by Stand for Health Freedom. You know, Leah Wilson, our director and co-founder, is just this amazing woman that we are so excited. Eventually, you'll get to know much more intimately. She helped to create this platform with us. And in New Jersey, when a bill was being pushed through with what were probably illegal practices, this is the heart and soul of pharma, right? I think it's the top 16 pharmaceutical companies in the world of 20 are based in New Jersey. They're going to strip the exemptions to vaccination, just like they did in California. It was a hit job. It was because of the grassroots action of at least 10 groups in New Jersey that we worked with, and the digital advocacy tool, as well as other amazing people you know about out there already. This bill got basically defeated, and it was a miracle. I was just in awe. And this was because we have tools still today available to us to make that impact. I mean, I don't know how many emails it was. It was, I think, over 100,000 were sent within
120,000.
120,000. Yeah. And I watched the videos, because Stand for Health Freedom is not just an email platform. It enables you to send video messages and even call
your local politicians, and it auto-populates it, so you don't have to go and find their email addresses. It does it for you.
No, it's amazing. It's extremely advanced software, and pharma was using it against people. And thankfully, we found a way to use it to help you and regain your power. So definitely, please stay abreast of Stand for Health Freedom. Join that. There'll be powerful actions coming your way. And there's just so much you can do out there. Like we're saying, in your life. Start with yourself. Start with taking, as Joelle embodies, become your own carrying card for health and wellness and freedom. It really does have a huge effect. You call it the butterfly effect or the Maharishi effect, is that when you work on yourself and you, basically exhibit these healthy actions, then you end up really having an impact at scale. And it may not be through social media. You might not get recognition, but it's happening and you're going to feel really good about it. And ultimately, I think that is what this moment is about. When I woke up and Kelly told me a friend was really upset because they heard Instagram was deleted on GreenMedInfo, I was in the middle of my morning exercise routine. I didn't bat an eye. I was just like, oh, wow, okay, that's happening. And it's not because I'm crazy or fearless. It's just that I realized that the time is now. They know they've lost fundamentally. They created social media to co-opt us. And ultimately, it's like a Pandora's box. They couldn't control it. And you guys are part of that equation. The only reason why they're deleting us is because you've made it that successful in sending a message that the mainstream media will not allow. So that's why we love your support. We really appreciate each and every one of you. And we'll do the best we can to continue to serve you in this window. Anything else, Joel?
Awesome. That's good.
Okay. Beautiful, everyone. Well, we'll follow up. We post this as a replay on GreenMedInfo and on Facebook. And thank you again for being part of this. It means the world to us. And we look forward to taking this to the next level with you. This is just the beginning. We are winning. And I believe that's what this is all about. Thanks so much.
Thank you.